Welcome to the Clean Library Podcast, where content meets conscience. We believe there are millions of you readers out there desperately searching for a better way to find clean content. Each episode, we will introduce you to a new author of clean books, giving you, your family, and your friends clean options.
My name is Marcus Williams, and I'm here with co-host Brock Morris. And today, our special guest is Deb Graham. Deb is the author of 30 books, both fiction and nonfiction, including the best-selling Cruise Addict's Wife series, cozy mysteries and mild paranormal novels, cookbooks, and books for children. She is currently working on 4 more. With a background in stand-up comedy and improv, all of her books are laced with humor and faith and leave you feeling better than when you started. After all, if you give up a few hours of your life, you shouldn't feel depressed at the end of the book. All but one of her novels has a strong female character because the writing world needs more of those. Deb and her husband have 3 more or less adult children and 11 grandchildren whom she affectionately claims are cuter than yours. I might have to disagree with you there, Deb, but
you're wrong.
All right. A traveler, Deb enjoys watching pelicans and whales, sunsets, and palm trees swaying against the sky, and is ready to go anywhere that involves a suitcase or, better yet, a passport. Her favorite sounds are baby giggles and the sound ocean waves make on seashore rocks. She likes history, museums, touring places that make things, and talking to locals who often know more about their area than she does. Sharing a writing loft with her author husband, but never collaborating, Deb is co-owner of Graham Publishing in beautiful North Idaho. While some of her best books are cozy mysteries, and cozy writers often say they love their spouse and have several cats, she loves the guy, but sadly has no cats. Welcome, Deb. We're glad you're here with us today.
Thanks for including me.
All right, so we're going to go through your 2 truths and a lie before we jump into things, so that we got to guess these before the end. So far, I'm up 2-0 on Brock, so we'll see what happens today. All right, your 2 truths and a lie. I've visited all 50 states plus 31 countries. My favorite activity is downhill skiing, and I'm allergic to cows. Visited 50 states and 31 countries, downhill skiing, and an allergy to cows. So we'll see if we can figure those out as we go through our conversation today. So, Deb, why don't you just start and tell us about how you became an author? How did you start writing books?
Well, I've always written. There are different kinds of people in the world. There are math people. There are music people. I'm neither of those. I'm a word person. And words have just always been important to me. One of my earliest memories is at the dining room table. My 2 teenage brother and sister were doing their homework, and I wanted to climb up and do my paperwork too, my homework with them. And I remember asking my 15-year-old brother, how do you spell orange? And he said, S-T-U-P-I. And that's when my mother came racing in from the kitchen. And Mom came in like an angry bear. And I remember her yelling and saying, how will Deb ever know that words are important if you won't even teach her how to spell orange? And I remember sitting back and thinking, whoa, words are important. When I was in 2nd grade, I wrote a 2-act play that the teacher was so impressed with, she had the whole 2nd grade acted out. I kept a journal almost daily since I was 18, and I would like you to not do the math on that one, but it's been a while. I'm a writer. And about 11 years ago, my husband, who is not a writer, wasn't at that time, came to me and he said, I'm going to write a book. And I said, well, isn't that cute? And so he wrote a book, and he went to a bookstore, could not find one he wanted to write or read. And so he came home and wrote one instead. And it started to sell. And I thought, wait a minute, this is wrong, because I have got a string of abusive English teachers in my background. I know where your commas belong. I know where you may not leave your participles dangling. Okay, you may, but I will catch them. And I'm a better writer than he is, although his imagination does leave me in the dust. And so I thought, if he can do it, I can do it. And so I wrote a book, and you're supposed to write what you know. And what I know is I know cruising. And so I wrote, my first book was Tips from the Cruise Addict's Wife, which is kind of funny if you think about it, because I'm married to the cruise addict. Get it? Cute, huh? Anyway, it was accidentally a bestseller. It hit a niche market right at the right time. And so I began making money, and I began getting feedback, and I thought, well, that's kind of fun. And I realized that if he can do it, I can do it. And it just kind of skyrocketed and rolled since then. I think if my first book was an utter flop, I would have probably gone back to writing journals and letters and not bothered anyone. But here I am.
So that series, it's nonfiction. It's tips to help people who want to go on a cruise. Is that right?
Right. And I realized that when I was traveling on cruises that I know more than everybody else. And it's not that I'm particularly brilliant, but I am a compulsive reader. I'm one of those people who reads the fine print. I even read instructions. I even read recipes. I don't follow them, but I read them like a novel, front to back cookbooks. And I realized that on cruise ships, I just know more than other people. And I realized that people don't read, and so they don't know things. Like we met a man who didn't know that there was a dining room on the ship. He'd been eating nothing but burgers up by the pool for a week. I met a man who complained about, on the last day, he complained about the entertainment, that he was expecting maybe a show of some sort. And all there was that one man at that one piano every night. All he found was the piano bar. And I just realized that I know more than other people. I also am, I used to be frugal. Now I'm cheap. And I know all kinds of ways you can save money on traveling and on other things too. And so I just thought it'd be fun to compile it into a book. And it turned out to be a bestseller. It's taken off. And I've had so many people, both in person and on reviews and things, tell me that it has saved their trip, that they have saved so much money. They know more than anybody else, and they're able to show off their great knowledge, even if it is in the form of a paperback with a whole lot of orange highlighting. Mm-hmm. I help people. There you go.
So has that series translated to your fiction books as well?
It has. I have a lot of friends who are authors, and I'm not properly intimidated by them. New York Times bestseller doesn't faze me at all. We have hamburgers together, big deal. But I found that when they were telling me that that's great, I write fiction, and I have written a lot of fiction, or nonfiction rather, that I should go into novels. And so you write what you know. And so my first couple of novels took place on cruise ships. And it's fun to be able to tour them. They're not tour books by any means, but you certainly could plan a vacation in either Alaska or Hawaii using them. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it does carry over.
I love this concept of writing what you know. So taking that literally, can we expect a tips and tricks on downhill skiing at any time soon coming out? Is that something is that one of your new?
That wasn't even subtle. Wait a minute.
Is that one of the 4 books?
You're going to have to be a little sneakier.
That was a
I respect that. All right.
Yeah.
I'll try to be more sneaky going forward.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So at some point you made a decision to write clean books, whether consciously or not. How did that happen for you?
Well, I think it's both conscious and non-conscious for me. For one thing, unconscious? There we go. Yeah. For one thing, that's just who I am. I'm basically boring. I'm somebody's mother. I'm clean. I'm wholesome. I have a good vocabulary, but it's not the kind that's going to make your grandmother blush. Mm-hmm. I believe that we have an obligation as writers, as humans actually, to push back the darkness, to uplift whenever we possibly can. And so it wouldn't occur to me to write a book full of trash and filth and language that you ought not be using in public. That's just not who I am.
Yeah. So one of the questions we get a lot, especially authors that want to come on the podcast, is, well, what is your definition of clean? I don't know if my book's clean or not. What does that even mean? And, is that a subjective thing or not? So for you, what does clean mean?
Well, I think it's probably hard to quantify, but I think in my case, it means that anyone can read it anywhere without any fear of censor or being embarrassed. If my 95-year-old mother picks up one of my books, and she does, she's my best cheerleader, actually, I'm perfectly fine with her reading every word. I don't have to tell her, you better skip chapter 18. I don't warn her. We have a 9-year-old grandson who's writing a book now, and I find that hilarious because no one told him he's too young, and so he's just doing it. And he sees me and his grandfather writing books, and he thinks that's what adults do. So he's writing a book. And if he reads one of my books, and I know he's read several of them, I don't have to worry about him saying, Grandma, what does that mean? Anyone can read any of my books without getting red in the face. And I think also it takes more skill to write a clean book because, I've got a background in stand-up comedy. Mm-hmm. And I know that in comedy, it's easy to get up and just swear a blue streak. It's not that hard. You can make your audience even laugh. They're embarrassed. They're not laughing because you're funny. But I think that's the same thing with writing. Do you want to use good content or do you just want to make people red in the face? For me, it's important to have a good, strong plot line, good, sturdy characters, relatable characters. And I want people to feel good when they're reading it. I don't want them to have to be squirming and uncomfortable and paper clipping those 2 pages together. That's not okay.
Hmm. So you've written a lot of books. How do you organize your ideas, and what's your process for writing?
Yeah, organized. That's a funny word. Have you seen my desk behind us? Not a word I do a lot. As far as I do plot my books out. I write them. I visualize it like kind of like an island where I'm jumping from island to island, and I will eventually get there down the river. But I may go up over the dunes, down over the mountain. There could be some downhill skiing. You don't know. Before I get to the next island, I always write my last chapter first, so I know where I'm going. But it may just detour. I found that the characters talk to me, and coming from a nonfiction background, I found that very disturbing. One time I was at a convention with many writer friends, and we were sitting around talking to a bunch of novelists that evening. And I said, I think I might be losing my mind. And they said, oh, do tell. And and I mentioned that I was hearing voices, that I was hearing characters speaking to me in my mind. And they all said, mm-hmm, uh-huh. So what's the problem? Apparently that's what they do. But in the beginning, it disturbed me because nonfiction does not do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that I've had that same experience too. So I'm glad that I'm not alone in that either.
You might be crazy, but you're not alone.
There we go. And I'm good with that. I'm okay with that. That's fine.
Good enough.
So I assume in some of your books you have bad guys.
We need an antagonist. Yeah, we do.
So a lot of people will argue that in order to be a bad guy, you have to have bad language or act this certain way. So how do you manage to keep it clean while still having an interesting and engaging bad guy?
I think a lot of it again has to do with the content and with humor. There's a lot of humor in all of my books. I find it hilarious, just in a personal day-to-day kind of thing. I live in North Idaho. We have a lot of these gruff people, with the plaid shirts and the big beard. Impressive beards here. I don't personally have one, but there's some good ones in this area. And for a big burly guy to say, "Ah, darn," is hilarious because I know they could let loose a string of blue words if they wanted to, and they don't. And I find it just charming. So I think in my case, my characters, there are bad guys. We've got a few thieves. We've got an assassin he's not a bad guy. He's just a little misunderstood. He's a New York mobster and the dim-witted hitman. But I think that I can make them more realistic if I don't make them just icky. If they're, doing bad things and they're using language that we don't really need, I don't think that makes them stronger characters. I think the character development is way more important. And anytime I can tie humor into it, gosh, I think the world needs that.
Yeah. So how do you find a disadvantage in the marketplace for writing clean, or is an advantage, or it doesn't matter?
I think it matters quite a bit. I think there's a distinct line between those who would really like to read what I consider trash. It's throwaway literature. There's not really a lot of strength in the writing of it, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. That it just, dark, evil, foul language. To me, there's no appeal over there. And then you've got the stories that have strong characters, strong development, strong plots, and I'm really drawn to those. But I know I'm not the only one. My husband and I sell a lot at in-person events. We did 49 last year, which is, yes, it's excessive and it's crazy, and we're repeating it again this year. So there. But that's a way to get instant feedback. And I've had, I think, 2 people out of the thousands that I've interacted with who've come to me and said, "Oh, I don't want to read anything wholesome. That's for grandmothers." Well, I am a grandmother, but I've been reading wholesome stuff my whole life. But we've also had hundreds of people come to me and thank me. "Oh, thank you for writing clean, wholesome stuff that I can feel good about, that'll make me feel better at the end of the day, that I can share with my 10-year-old, with my 14-year-old. I think it's important for us to uplift and to help one another as we're going through our life. And I think that pushing back the darkness is one of the main things we need to do that by. There you are.
And in books, you don't often get personal in-person feedback. So that's kind of a cool way to do it. So when you're at these markets where people are there to buy vegetables or their other crafts and stuff, how do you stand out as an author to get people to come over to your booth?
I know I'm supposed to be jumping up and down and waving a flag, but I really don't do that. What I do instead is I watch people And I watched the way they divide themselves into groups. There are those who are there to get tomatoes, and that's all they're going to do. Today is tomato seeking day. I'm on it. And then there are other people who are there to meander and to wander around. And then there are the word people, the book people. And I can spot them 30 yards away. Those are the ones who make a beeline and they say, oh, wow, books, look, a real live author, which is hilarious because I'm actually just a person. Anyway, but they want to interact and they're shy about it and they're kind of embarrassed to admit that maybe I've written something too, or signing a book I find is really ridiculous. I've been writing my name since I was about 3, but if I offer to sign my book, they go, oh, would you? And it's just ridiculous. But those are my people. Those are the book people. So I will just interact with, what do you like to read? And we'll end up sharing ideas. Often they'll give me book suggestions. I always keep paper with me so I can write down some ideas. And we end up just interacting. And often they will admit that, I've always wanted to write something, or even I have written something. And my husband and I, through Graham Publishing, which is our company, we've been able to help, it's got to be 150 people get their books published from that idea they had in their, or maybe they've even got a document in their file folder, to be able to get a book in their hand. I like that.
So what kind of services do you provide in helping people do that?
Mostly I give orders. I'm very good at that. So I will suggest where they can get it formatted. I've got editor friends. I have book designers on call pretty much, cover designers. I just have good resources. I'm a skilled gatherer of resources, and I'm able to share those. And I'm also a fairly decent cheerleader. And so I can encourage them along the way. Not that I'm good at it myself. I have a fairly decent case of imposter syndrome most days.
So hearing about your experience at these fairs and farmers markets and having people come up to you, one of the things that we have spoken with several authors about is the concept of how to receive feedback, how to accept that, how to work that into the editing process and the writing process, and sometimes how to, when you have to sort of put that off and know and trust yourself and move forward. I also see that some of your books have over 700 reviews. Can you share with us a little bit about your approach to both gaining and getting good feedback, and how do you manage the questioning of yourself that might bring, and the challenges that come with writing as you start to get people who you engage with who've read your material and are either giving good or not so good feedback?
I have 700 reviews. That's pretty cool. I think it was closer to 500 last time I looked. I don't read reviews. I don't think that reviews are written for me. They're written from readers to other readers. And the way I look at it is, if you like what I'm writing, then you are my people. If you come up and you say, oh, I really don't care. What I like is cowboy poetry. I don't do cowboy poetry. So you are not my people. And that's okay. You go find your own tribe. I'm good with that. I don't feel offended in the least that you don't interact with my style of writing. I'm good with that. I would like to know if I'm doing something different. If you think that maybe the main character needs to be stronger, I like that kind of thing. I'd like to know that, I left a great gaping plot hole. I left a breadcrumb back in chapter 3, and here we are in 18, and I never mentioned it again. I need to know that. But I don't need to know that, I really think that her books are better than yours. Or I don't care. Leave a review. Don't leave a review. I'm okay with it.
I love that. I love that resilience.
But I literally don't read them.
Yeah, and I imagine some of your experiences as a stand-up comedian had helped galvanize that ability to just be like, hey, if you don't like my jokes, you don't like what I'm doing in this live setting, then you build up some resiliency, and then you're not the people who are going to like my jokes or my books for this example. So thank you.
But that's okay. Yeah. There's a lot of books in the world, and there's another set coming on after mine. You'll be okay.
There's a book in your nonfiction called You Can't Write by Committee, which looks interesting. What is that one about?
That's just a series of essays about writing, and it's just some insights that I've had. They're all really short, a page or two at most. And the idea is that, I guess it's what we just talked about. If I give you my writing, I just wrote this chapter, I'd like you to read it, and you tear it apart. And then Brock comes along and he says, I really think that what we need is pretty soon it's not mine anymore. You can't do that. I'm the only one that can write my words. Now, if you'd like, you're not going to correct my commas because you're just not. But if I happen to have a faulty quotation mark or a word you don't think is correct, You're not going to find that in my books. You're just not. But say there was, you maybe don't like my thread or my plot line. That you're more likely to find. I'm open to discussing it, but if you change it, I was talking about pelicans. Suddenly we're talking about horseshoes. What the? I can't. It's no. Now it's not my story anymore. If you get too many people looking like in the proofreading department or when we're critiquing, if you get too many people's inputs, it doesn't become yours. It's not yours anymore. And that's where the committee comes in. I'm okay with committees, but not in my writing. They don't fit there.
So, would you recommend aspiring authors to join writing groups, or would you say they're not worth their time?
Yes, I think both of those are true. I think a
Okay.
lot of them are not worth their time because they'll tear you apart and they'll change your words. I think if you can find someone you trust who is knowledgeable and have their input, I think it's invaluable. So, yes, I feel very strongly both ways.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. I think that's great advice for new authors. I see a lot of authors, especially on, Facebook groups or whatever, who you can tell are just insecure about their work. So they want opinions or reinforcement or whatever. So they ask a question and you get 150 responses of different opinions from different people. So now what are you supposed to feel like? You have 150 people telling you to do something different.
That's the committee. Don't listen to them.
Yeah,
You can't
because
write by committee.
and that's always been my advice is it's your book, write what you want to write.
Exactly. But close your quote marks.
Yes. I can get behind that for sure. So is there something that you wish someone would have told you, like looking back now, is there something you wish you would have known when you started writing or no?
I don't know. I think I wish I would have known how undifficult it is that getting published, especially if you go the indie route, exclusively if you go the indie route, is incredibly easy. I don't know why more people don't do it. I kind of wish I would have started to be published maybe 15 years earlier
Okay.
because it's really not that difficult. Other than that, I don't think so. I will share a piece of advice that my mom gave me. My mother's 95 years old in a couple of weeks, and she's my best cheerleader. And I've gone to her several times when I'm about to do a major presentation or, I speak at conferences and things like that. And sometimes I get imposter syndrome, which is that horrible feeling of raw shelled oysters under my rib cage. Feels horrific. And I've gone to my mom, and I remember telling her one time, but Mom, I'm a fraud. They're going to see right through me. And she did not miss a beat. And she said, well, we're all frauds. Do it anyway. And so when I wavered and my knees were buckling up there on stage, I did it anyway. And people liked it. And I survived, and I've gone on to do other things. And it's okay. So I think knowing that we're all frauds, do it anyway, is pretty good advice.
And that's probably much better advice than saying, no, you're not a fraud, honey. I like the way she put it. I think that's more accurate and more helpful. I love that.
Imposter syndrome is a real thing. And I think we all face it once in a while.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So as an indie published author, an indie publisher, do you think the traditional publishing is dead? Is the industry trending in that direction, or can they both live together, coincide side by side?
I think there will always be a place for traditional publishing, but I think it's fading. The tide is definitely turning. For decades or years anyway, there was a stigma. Oh, you're indie published because you couldn't get a traditional publishing contract. Well, I'll tell you that I'm making decent money now, but if you quadrupled it, I would not take you could multiply by 10. I would not take a traditional publishing contract. You can call me controlling if you need to, but I like being able to control my words. I have friends who have traditional publishing contracts, and they've destroyed their books. They've completely changed their title, their genre, their characters. It's not their book anymore. And again, it's that committee thing. Plus, I'm making significantly more money, not to be bragging, but I am because I'm an indie publisher. I have a good friend who has a book traditionally published, and she makes 4 cents, 4 cents, no less than a nickel per copy. But out of that, she has to pay her editor. No, my time is worth more than that. I am worth more than that. But at the same time, there will always be people who need the feedback of being able to say, I am traditionally published. It's not going away, but the tide is definitely turning.
And I think it's totally okay for you to brag. That's fine. I think
Thanks.
I'm
worth more than 4 cents.
Absolutely. So are any of your books available as audiobooks?
Yes, about a third of them are.
So how was that process for you?
Well, again, did I mention that I'm functionally cheap? And so I hear that the reason people can't do audiobooks is because they're too expensive. You have to hire a narrator or you have to set up your own. I don't love my voice. I am not going to narrate the book. But I did want to hire some narrators. And so I began thinking, where can I find a narrator who doesn't charge significant amount? James Earl Jones, for instance, charges $2,400 per finished hour. I probably didn't need him for the dim-witted hitman,
Probably not.
but she's, it's like 11 finished hours. Goodness. So what I do is I will go on to ACX, which is the back door, the warehouse entrance to Amazon's Audible books.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just put up a audition call for an audition saying that what I want is theater students only. Because a theater student, by definition, needs resume fodder. They need something for their people, for their resume, for their portfolio to say, look, I did this and this is how well I did at it. And also, being students, they're cheap, they're poor. So I'm able to pay a set rate, and it may not be anywhere near, it is not anywhere near $2,400 an hour, but it's a reasonable amount. And because we agree on it ahead of time, my books are able to produce for less than I would like them, than less than market value is what they are. But because we agreed ahead of time and they're happy with their portfolio, it works out really well. Now, one of my books is actually it's a thick book. It's a Mediterranean Cruise. It's by the cruise addict's wife. It's a nonfiction. And my narrator for that one refused to let me pay him. We agreed on an amount, and then when it came down to paying, he would not give me his contact information. And I tried everything I could possibly do to pay this guy. He would not let me pay him. And I still feel kind of bad about that. But he said that he did so well on it and he had so many accolades and it was such an addition to his portfolio that that's what he wanted. I didn't know what else to do.
Well, that portfolio is important. Like that's worth a lot to have that kind of thing in your portfolio. So
I guess so, but still.
yeah.
But yes, audiobooks are important. I also have ebooks and paperback and a couple of hardbacks, although I don't think I've ever sold a hardback except to my mother. But it's okay. I don't even own them myself. They're expensive. Yeah. But I meet a lot of people who only read ebooks or only read paperback and only do audiobooks. For me, I think it's important to hit all venues.
Right. So do you have any other clean authors that you would like our audience to know about that you would recommend to them?
Oh, I should have thought about that ahead of time. I like Diane Mott Davidson an awful lot. She writes a string of cozy mysteries. And a current one that I'm reading quite a bit of now is by Laurie Lewis. Laurie Lewis is a historical fiction writer. She writes amazing books. Her book, The Letter Carrier, has recently won all kinds of accolades, and it deserved every one of them. She's pretty amazing. She also has a series that takes place during the Revolutionary War. She's one of those skilled researcher people, and I'm kind of drawn to that. I've got a couple of historical fiction too, and I know the writing process is different than just turning out a basic cozy mystery or a Hallmark screenplay. There's a lot more work in them, and they're fun. So fun. I think I'd recommend those two.
Awesome. And you can really tell when someone does their research and makes that a priority in their stories.
Absolutely. And I can also tell the opposite.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Is there anything else that you would like readers out there to know about you or about your books or just the industry in general?
I'm not sure. I think the idea is that you can do it, I think is a really critical thing to know. And I think that indie authors, clean authors supporting each other is critical. I think that I just told you I don't read reviews, so I'm going to say something hypocritical here. But if you can write a review or write them a note or say something kind to them, authors are parasites, which isn't nice to say, but it's true. We get hungry. If you feed us with some kindness, with some words, with approaches here and there, it makes us happy.
That's excellent. Excellent advice. All right. Do you have any other questions, Brock, before we...
No, I think we can try to make our guesses.
All right. So, reminder again, visited all 50 states plus 31 countries. Favorite activities, downhill skiing, and I'm allergic to cows. So, Brock, you get to go first again.
All right. We'll see if I can actually score one here. So, I'm going to... use a little deductive reasoning on this and think, all right, if you're going to a lot of farmers markets and you're at a lot of fairs, that'd be a rough place to be with a strong allergy. So I'm going to say it's not. The lie is, well,
You think I'm not allergic to cows?
yeah, I guess I should rephrase that. So,
which one is the lie? Which
right,
one is
the lie? So what I'm going to say is that going back to the earlier statement that I made, that a non-answer is still an answer. So I think that the lie is your favorite activity is downhill skiing. Based on your bio, you've traveled a lot. So I feel like you would have visited all 50 states.
But you don't think I was skiing when I got there? I do live in North Idaho. We've got ski resorts.
It's true.
Four different directions.
But I'm doubling down because she's trying to convince me. Yeah, that's right. So I'm doubling down on it. Yeah.
Well, then I'm going to follow my trend of picking something different than you to increase the odds here. And I'm going to go with the cow allergy is the lie. So
would you like an answer, or we just leave you hanging?
No, which one's the lie?
I'm allergic to cows. I'm allergic to beef and milk and cows. Is that the most ridiculous allergy you've ever heard of? Also, cows don't go to farmers markets, so there's that.
I've not
They
even
go to
heard
fairs,
that.
but not farmers markets.
Yeah, milk I had heard of, but I was assuming that even included with that was, okay, it must be the hay or something that the cows are around, but literally all parts of
it's the cows.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, beef, leather, the whole cows. Stupidest allergy ever.
It is what it is, I guess. Well, there we go. I'm up 3-0, Brock.
And there's no way you would get me at the top of a mountain covered in snow with slippery boards under my feet.
No, so
nope, no death wish here.
You're wrong,
I
Marcus.
do not
she
ski.
is allergic and she does not ski. So.
That's right. So you did get that one. So it's 2 to 1. All right. See, like she said, there are math people and word people. I'm clearly not a math person.
It was 2 numbers.
1, 2. All right. Well, Deb, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Really enjoyed the conversation with you. Really appreciate it. And everyone, please subscribe and follow so that you can hear about more amazing authors as we continue with this podcast. Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks for the opportunity.